Hi, second graders. This is Mrs. Risley, and today I'm going to share with you a read aloud called The Life Cycle of a Frog. And when we listen to this story, we're going to find out that the frog's life cycle includes a transformation. And a transformation is a major change in the way that a frog looks. So let's see what happens in the life cycle of a frog. What sound do frogs make? That's right, they make croaking sounds like ribbit. Do you know there are thousands of different kinds of frogs in the world? Frogs don't look all alike either. Frogs can be different sizes and colors. The smallest frog in the world was recently discovered in New Guinea. It is smaller than a dime. The largest frog in the world is the Goliath frog from Africa. It can grow up to 3 feet long and weigh 7 pounds. Frogs live on every continent of the world except Antarctica. Why do you think they don't live in Antarctica? Frogs don't live in Antarctica because it is too cold. Although there is a frog that lives just inside the Arctic Circle. Do you know what a group of frogs is called? A group of frogs is called an army. Okay, now that you know some cool facts about frogs, let's find out about their life cycles. Just like a chicken, a frog's life cycle includes birth, growth, reproduction, and death. The reproduction stage creates new life so that the cycle repeats over and over again. Have you ever stood on the edge of a pond or a stream in the spring and spotted a jelly-like substance floating on the water? If so, you have seen the first stage of a frog's life cycle. This first stage of a frog's life cycle is the egg. The jelly-like substance is frog spawn, which is hundreds of soft jelly-like eggs. In the center of each egg is a tiny black dot. Each black dot is a tiny embryo that will become a tadpole soon. A developing young frog is called an embryo at its early stages and a tadpole at its later stages. When else have we heard about embryos? Remember, the inside of a tree seed is called an embryo. A growing baby chick is called an embryo as it grows inside the egg. The mother frog lays her eggs in water in spring, and when the cold winter months are over and the water is warm enough for her eggs to survive. What other living things reproduce in the spring when it's warm? Do you remember? That's right, trees and plants. The mother frog lays hundreds of eggs at one time. Female frogs lay hundreds of eggs at one time because not all of the eggs will survive. Unlike hens, frogs do not usually stay with their eggs. So fish, birds, and water insects are likely to eat some of the eggs. Some of the eggs will survive and eventually develop into tadpoles. Just as a developing chick is nourished by the yolk of an egg as it grows, a developing frog is nourished by yolk-like material in the egg. Within a few days or weeks of its development, depending on the type of frog, the embryo develops into a tadpole with a head and a tail. Soon after that, when its gills are formed, it is ready to hatch out of the egg. Gills allow the tadpole to breathe underwater. Fish have gills too. People cannot breathe underwater because people do not have gills. We hold our breath when we go underwater. Once it hatches, a tadpole lives in water. A tadpole has a long, flat tail that it uses to swim. Its gills allow it to get oxygen from the water. Tadpoles swim about in search of food. Although they still feed from the leftovers of the eggs, they also search for small green water plants. Tadpoles grow very quickly, especially in warm water. Try to get the pages to not stick together here. After some time, the tadpole begins its transformation into a frog. When a living thing undergoes a huge change in shape, this process is called metamorphosis. Tadpoles change quite dramatically from fish-like creatures with gills into four-legged land creatures with lungs. Frogs can breathe air because they have lungs just like people. Lungs are the body parts that we use to breathe air. Let's find out some more about this remarkable transformation. After the appearance of the head and the tail, the tadpole grows back legs. Gradually, lungs develop inside its body, and its gills begin to disappear inside its body. Because it has lungs, the tadpole can now breathe air. Next, front legs begin to grow. As tadpole's legs grow, its tail gets smaller. The tadpole uses its tail and its legs to swim through the water. It also begins to use its legs to climb onto plants in the water. Gradually, the tadpole's legs grow longer and its tail disappears completely. At this stage, the tadpole is a young frog that can leave its watery home and use its lungs to breathe. For many types of frogs, all of this has happened in about 12 weeks. At this stage of development, a young frog is about an inch long. That is roughly the size of your thumb. Very young frogs are often called froglets. Young frogs leave the pond to find other tasty treats to eat on land. They do not go too far away from their watery home, though. On land, they search for small insects, worms, and slugs. They catch their food with their long, sticky tongues. They have to be very careful, though, as lots of animals, such as snakes, lizards, and birds, eat young frogs. Do you know what you call an animal that can live on land or water? An animal that can live in water and on land is called an amphibian. Frogs are amphibians. Although frogs spend a lot of time on land, they stay fairly close to water. Frogs need to keep their skin damp or somewhat wet. Instead of drinking water, they absorb it through their skin. Frogs breathe through their skin when they are in water, but they breathe through their lungs when they are on land. They also seek out water when they want to cool down. If water is not nearby, they sit in the shade. They sit in the sun when they want to warm up. In winter, many frogs hibernate. Often they burrow or dig a hole in the mud at the bottom of ponds. If they can't find a pond, they seek out a damp place, such as a pile of logs, in which they spend the winter. The young frog has to survive until it is 2 or 3 years old to become a parent. To live that long, frogs have various survival techniques. A survival technique is a way of staying alive. Their skin is often the color of their natural habitat. This helps them blend into the background and avoid hungry predators. This is a form of camouflage. Frogs can hop quickly to get out of reach. They are also excellent swimmers. They can jump into the nearest pond or river to avoid danger. Some frogs have poisonous skin to protect them from predators. All frogs have large, bulging eyes. This helps them to more easily find their own food and avoid becoming dinner for some other creature. When a frog is between 2 and 3 years old, it will return to the pond where it was born. At this stage, the frog is now considered an adult. In spring, male frogs croak loudly to let the females know that they are ready to mate. As with chickens, the eggs must be fertilized by a male frog, or else they will not develop into baby frogs. And so the life cycle begins all over again. Each spring, a jelly-like substance appears in the ponds and rivers. It is frog spawn, or hundreds of small eggs containing tiny embryos. Frog spawn is a compound word. If spawn means eggs, what does frog spawn mean? That's right, frog eggs. In time, many will hatch into tadpoles. A little while later, these tadpoles will turn into frogs that will live for 7 years or more. It is amazing that frogs change their appearance so dramatically throughout their life cycle, from egg to tadpole to adult. Next, we will learn about an incredible transformation in another creature's life cycle. Stay tuned.